there comes a quiet moment in life when a person realizes they no longer feel at home inside themselves. Thoughts drift like unfamiliar voices. Emotions feel muted, blurred, or delayed. And the inner world that once felt intimate now feels distant, as if someone else has been living there in your place. It doesn't happen suddenly. It builds slowly, through years of silence, self-abandonment, or the quiet habit of prioritizing everything except your own inner life. One day, you notice that your reflection feels unrecognizable, not because your face has changed, but because the person behind your eyes feels lost. There is a specific moment, often quiet, almost invisible, when a person realizes that something inside them has shifted. It might appear during a small, ordinary pause, staring at a blank ceiling, washing dishes, waiting for a message that never arrives. Nothing dramatic happens. No breakdown. No explosion. Just a gentle sense that the thoughts moving through the mind don't feel like they belong entirely to you. It's a strange kind of distance. Not the dramatic kind you read about, but the soft, nearly undetectable drift that makes your inner world feel slightly out of focus. You speak, and your words sound rehearsed. You feel, but the emotion arrives late. You look at your own habits and wonder when they became automatic. The life you're living continues, but you watch it more than you participate in it. You inhabit yourself the way someone might inhabit a borrowed room. Carefully, hesitantly, aware that something no longer fits. This moment often emerges after years of subtle self-abandonment. Yet when it arrives, it feels sudden. It feels like awakening in a familiar house, but realizing all the furniture has been rearranged while you slept. The routines are there. The responsibilities are there. The outward identity remains unchanged. But the inner narrator, the one who once felt alive, coherent, present, feels strangely distant. People rarely talk about this moment because it sounds too abstract to be real. How do you explain that you've become unfamiliar to yourself? How do you describe the confusion of feeling present in your body yet absent from your emotions? Most bury the realization. They call it stress. They call it exhaustion. They call it just not feeling like myself lately, as if it were a temporary imbalance instead of a symptom of deeper disconnection. But the mind remembers. It notices the subtle drop in authenticity, the thinning of emotional color, the growing quiet between thoughts. It recognizes when the inner voice grows faint, when the emotional landscape becomes muted, when the sense of meh becomes less solid than it used to be. And even if the conscious mind tries to minimize it, the subconscious registers the change immediately. This moment of disconnection is often accompanied by a soft fear, not loud or overwhelming, but delicate and existential. A fear that wonders, where did I go? Not physically, not socially, but internally. A fear born not from chaos, but from unfamiliarity. It is the unsettling realization that you can lose intimacy with yourself, even while your life remains intact. That you can function perfectly while feeling emotionally misplaced. Sometimes the moment arrives during growth, when a person evolves faster than their identity can keep up. Other times, it emerges from emotional overload when the mind protects itself by numbing out. And sometimes, It comes from a long period of survival where a person silences too many feelings for too long until their own inner world stops sounding like home. People expect the moment of disconnection to feel dramatic, but it is usually gentle. A faint misalignment, a quiet note that feels out of tune, a soft echo that lingers between who you were and who you are becoming. It is the mind's way of signaling that something important has been drifting without acknowledgement. That part of the self has gone quiet from neglect or overwhelm or years of emotional compromise. And yet, this moment is not an ending, it's an opening, a threshold. The first indication that something within you is asking to be seen again. The realization may feel unsettling, but it is also deeply honest. It marks the exact point when awareness returns, even if clarity has not. Because becoming a stranger to your own mind is not a disappearance. It is a pause in familiarity. And the moment you notice the distance is the same moment the journey back to yourself quietly begins. Disconnection rarely begins with a single event. It begins with a slow drift, gradual, quiet, almost gentle in the way it pulls a person away from themselves. You don't notice it at first. You're too busy adjusting, accommodating, surviving. The mind doesn't announce the moment it starts letting go. It simply adapts, moment by moment, until the distance becomes the new normal. Often, this drift begins in childhood, long before a person has the language to understand what is happening. The earliest lessons are not taught through words, but through the emotional atmosphere they grow up in. Some children learn quickly which parts of themselves are welcome and which parts must be muted to keep the peace. A sensitive child lowers their voice. An expressive child quiets their feelings. A hurt child convinces themselves they are fine, because their world makes no room for anything else. Slowly, they learn that authenticity has a cost. That comfort comes from fitting in, not from being fully seen. And so they shrink, bit by bit, to fit the emotional climate that surrounds them. For others, the drift begins with excessive expectations, being praised for composure, for maturity, for responsibility far beyond their age. They become the child who holds everything together, who absorbs tension, who instinctively avoids burdening others. They become fluent in self-silencing long before they understand what they've lost. By the time they reach adulthood, the drift feels natural. Emotional suppression becomes second nature. They become experts at functioning, at appearing stable, at performing the version of themselves that keeps life moving smoothly. But with every compromise, with every feeling swallowed to maintain harmony, another small fragment of the inner world fades. And because the drift is gradual, it rarely feels like a problem. In fact, it often feels helpful at first. Distancing from one's emotions can make life easier. It can reduce conflict. It can create the illusion of control. The mind learns that silence is safer than honesty, that numbness is easier than vulnerability. So it numbs, it simplifies, it represses. But repression has a cost, a quiet one, a subtle erosion. The drift continues through adolescence and early adulthood, reinforced by environments that reward productivity over presence, appearance over introspection, resilience over emotional truth. People learn to keep going even when parts of themselves fall behind. They learn to prioritize what is expected over what is felt. They learn that staying in motion is easier than stopping to feel the weight of their own emotions. And so, without meaning to, they begin living externally. Life becomes a sequence of obligations and roles, each one performed with practiced ease. They know how to show up for others, how to meet standards, how to maintain routines. But slowly, the distance inside grows. They become more familiar with who they should be than who they genuinely are. They learn to survive by disconnecting from the deeper layers of their emotions, desires, and identity. The most unsettling part is that the drift often feels like independence, like strength, like resilience. People mistake emotional distance for maturity, when in reality, it is often a protective response to environments that taught them it wasn't safe to feel deeply. But somewhere along the way, the inner self, the one that once felt natural and instinctive, becomes quieter, softer, less accessible, not gone, just buried beneath years of adaptation. The drift becomes a kind of emotional sleepwalking, living outwardly while feeling inwardly absent. This chapter of life is not dramatic. It's simply the accumulation of unspoken compromises. The quiet agreement a person makes with themselves. I will be who I need to be, even if it costs me connection with myself. And yet, even in the slow drift away, something remains. A small, persistent part of the self that watches from a distance. It waits patiently in the background, carrying every forgotten truth, every silenced feeling, every piece of identity that was set aside for survival. The drift may be slow, but so is the pull to return. And the moment a person begins to notice the distance, that forgotten part of themselves stirs, not loudly, not urgently, just enough to remind them that the self they lost has never truly disappeared. Self-alienation is not just an emotional experience. It is also a measurable psychological and neurological response. When a person becomes a stranger to their own mind, the shift is not imagined. It happens quietly within the biology of stress, memory, and emotional regulation. The brain rewires itself to protect you, even if the protection eventually becomes a barrier to your own identity. When emotional overwhelm becomes chronic, the mind begins to separate experience from awareness. This separation is subtle at first. A slight delay in emotional responses, a muted reaction, a moment where thoughts feel disconnected from the body. Neuroscience calls this dissociation. A natural survival mechanism where the brain reduces sensory and emotional intensity so a person can function through pain they feel unequipped to face. Dissociation is not always dramatic. It is not always the cinematic blankness people imagine. Often, it looks like emotional fog, mental autopilot, a quieting of inner dialogue. The brain temporarily limits access to feelings because it believes it is safer not to feel them fully. When this happens repeatedly over months or years, the mind learns the pattern. It begins to create distance automatically, even during moments that are not threatening. This is how self-alienation slowly becomes a default state. The amygdala, responsible for detecting emotional threat, becomes overactive from long-term stress. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for reflection, self-understanding, and emotional processing.